Welcome to Auto Off Topic. Good evening, Brad. How are you?
I am well, Andrew. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
I'm sitting here nursing my wounds from rusty sheet metal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Hmm. I know we've been in the meantime nursing our wounds from our dirt rally championship.
Well, that's just because we host a championship that we have no business hosting because we can't win.
No, not at all. It's Let's see. The first one we did, it was New England, which I think you missed because you weren't around.
Yeah, I was on the road, unfortunately. No, wait, no, I did that first one.
Oh, you got in the New England one? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, I did. I missed the first one on our other rally that we participate in.
Oh, that's right. I set it up so you could be able to do it when you get home. So
Yep.
it was H2, which is the polo and the golf in the game,
Mm-hmm.
front wheel drive. That was at New England.
Peugeot in the Golf.
That's right.
Yeah, I think I used the Golf.
I used the Peugeot.
French power.
And yeah. And then what else did we do? We went to New Zealand.
I don't know. I was just trying to load the thing up on my laptop sitting next to me, and I can't. And my short-term memory of where I actually go in the world is bad when I take a road trip. So I can only imagine how bad it is where I virtually go in video games. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
it was New Zealand, and those
Okay,
were F1 cars.
so
No, sorry, H1
H1.
cars.
So it's the Mini, the Citroën, and the Lancia.
I said F because I had front wheel drive in my head, but it's
Yep,
historic one.
H1. Yep, which I use the Lancia because it's my favorite car in the whole game.
Yeah, I used that too this time. It's better than the Mini in the game.
I think the Mini is too low,
Yeah,
and you wind up bottoming out in places too much.
yeah, and then
And the Citroen is just too big and ungainly.
yeah, the Lancia is pretty good.
It's a sweet spot for the historic one class for sure. So yeah, Dirt Rally 2.0. For those who don't know, we've talked about it a few times before, but we decided to do another tournament, and it doesn't go well for us because it's frustrating because I am innumerably better than I was when we first started playing the game. But the problem is, I think that everybody who was already better than me has also improved.
Yeah, well, you know what I've also been doing too is playing more of the time trial mode. So you just go pick, and I kind of been running practice before some of the rallies, especially when we first started because I was rusty. So I did a bunch of time trials at New England just to get into the groove with the H2 cars.
Yeah, that's probably what I should do.
And I mean, one of the stages now globally, I have a time that's 139th in the world. So
That sounds like pretty far down the list, Andrew.
139th.
I mean, listen, would you brag to somebody if you came in 139th place somewhere?
I mean, when there's like thousands of people that play,
I'm just screwing with you. That's definitely pretty good. That's probably top 10% at least.
yeah, that's pretty good
Yeah.
for. And it's like 48 seconds off um, the top time.
Which
So
seems like a lifetime.
it is a lifetime, but
Yeah.
it's better than I used to do, especially with a wheel.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not discrediting you because I'm sure I'm further down that list than you are. So the game is so hard to be consistent on. And I have some times where, the way the game is set up, you have your segment times during each stage. And on the side of the game when you're playing, it lights up red or green. If you're red, if you're behind the guy who's done it faster than you in your tournament, or green if you're the fastest one who's done it so far in your tournament. I've greenlit a bunch of those individual segments of stages, yet I'm still 2 minutes behind the overall at the end of the race. So it's like I know that I get it, I know that I can do it, but at the same time, I can't link it all together from the beginning of the event to the end of the event to not be behind. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, well, if you like just go off a little bit, it eats so much time.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you get to the point where you can't recover the car yourself, so you'll spin off and then you're like forward reverse. You're like trying to get it back on the road. Meanwhile, if you had just recovered it, it just would have been 30-second penalty.
Or
But
sometimes
like,
an 8-second penalty, but you don't know that it's going to be that hard to recover until it's too late.
yeah, exactly. So if you have a couple of those add up over 6 stages, and then you're
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yeah, and that's probably more what it is than anything else. I had one, I think it was in the New Zealand one, where I went through a fence and then
Oh,
you get
oh my
stuck on
gosh.
the other side of the fence. And yeah, you hit the pause button because you want to recover the car. Because like, I'm not going to get back to this fence, and there's no option to recover the car. It makes you drive back onto the road, and I couldn't
You
drive
do
back
the
on the
complete
road.
stop.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yeah, and then it'll wait like a beat, and then it'll let you hit the restart.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't realize that, and I was sitting behind there, stuck behind this fence for like, I don't know,
Yes.
45 seconds because you
That happened to me in the last stage of that rally.
super frustrating.
I was cooking along, and then it was like the cattle fences were like one-way gates. Like you could bash through them coming off the road, but then I'm like, well, I'm not that far from the end. I just want to bash through this fence to get back going, and it was just like funk. Nope.
Yeah, it has
Like,
a lot to do with angle and
okay.
speed. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Super annoying.
yeah, we got all tied up back there. I was on the wrong side of the fence. The next thing I know, it's like been 2 minutes. It's like,
Hmm.
so frustrating.
And then if you catch a flat, depending where you catch the flat, if you're at the beginning of the rally, or the beginning of the stage, you're like, well, I got to change it. 1 minute penalty, because if you don't, it'll just go and go and go until the tire is gone, and then you
Yeah.
can hear it. It's just on the rim.
So also one thing I've learned,
Yeah.
we've been playing it with was it hardcore damage off,
Mm-hmm.
extreme damage, hardcore damage, whatever it is. So you have
Yeah.
a little bit more leeway when it comes to like bouncing off of trees. You can do it
Yes.
once in a while,
Yeah.
but
It's
I
it's
did
a little
learn
more
that.
forgiving.
So my thing is I've always not changed a tire if it doesn't make me spin off the road every time I hit the brakes. So it's
Right.
like a right rear tire sometimes won't be that big a deal. I'll just let it
Yeah.
fly on a front wheel drive car.
Yep.
But what I learned, because that's what happened to me on a front wheel drive car, I had a rear tire go early on in the stage, and I didn't change it because I was like, well, I think it would cost me more than a minute. It would cost me less than a minute penalty to just drive a little bit slower to the whole stage. But I got a terminal damage, and my terminal damage was wheels because I ran it with no tire for almost the whole stage, and I was like one
Uh,
segment left at the end of the stage, and the car just terminal damaged on me, and I DNF the stage. So I got
yep.
the maximum, whatever the time limit is for that stage, 15 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So it did, and that obviously ruined me for everything else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's rough.
you can still terminal damage with hardcore damage off. It's just a lot harder to do, I guess.
And then the funny thing too, when you go to do a time trial, I've caught flats, and it just doesn't. The car doesn't carry the spares, because you're only doing one stage at a
Because you
time.
don't set it up.
Yeah, but automatically when you're doing a rally, the car comes with a spare. You can
Yeah,
either
like
do
one
one, or
spare.
you can add a second.
Which I used to add a second because I used to get flats all the time. But now that I've improved, I only run the one. And I haven't
Yeah.
had to use two for a while.
And then, but you're just doing the time trial mode, so you just reset it. It's like whatever.
Yeah, well, I wish there was some kind of, and maybe I don't, some kind of 2 tries to get it right every time because it's just so hard to get this game right.
Yeah.
And I've decided that it's not a question of my skill in the game. It's a question of something to do with my eyesight. Nighttime in the rain, I cannot see junctions.
Yeah. I've switched to, I just do the hood view, because if you're trying to do it in the cockpit
It's too much
with the
vision
wiper
going on.
going, you
Yeah.
can't see.
Yeah,
It's just like, it's not.
I do the same view.
It's
But
like, because it's 3D, but it's not really 3D.
yep.
It's really hard to tell where
Yeah.
stuff is.
So
And
I've
you
switched to the same, very front of the car view. I think
Yeah.
it helps a lot. But the same thing still at nighttime in the rain. If it's a junction comes up and there's like a slight to the left road and a slight to the right road, and you got to pick which one to go down, or you don't have to pick. Like you're supposed to go to the left. Sometimes I won't even see the turn, and I just wind up plowing into the Y section and I get all frustrated and mad. But it is what it is. You got to pay more attention, pay as much attention as you can to your co-driver, and you should be good. But
I mean,
some of those
as you're
junk,
getting, the other thing you need to do as you're getting quicker, are you turning your notes up sooner?
I didn't know you could change that.
Yes, you can change the pace of when he says the notes. So as you're getting faster, like go into settings, find that the pace note setting. You can either do it slower or faster. Like so, at the beginning of the game you set them slower, and as you progress and get faster, like I kind of had them in the middle, and then I was finding I was getting faster, so I went like one click to the left, which is quicker. I didn't go like extreme early, but you want them a little bit earlier, and that helps.
Okay, I'll try that out. I haven't.
Because now that you're going faster, you need them sooner.
Yeah, I didn't know you could adjust it, so they've always been on whatever the default setting is.
And then one of the other things I do, I will, especially on some of the older historic cars, I'll up the final drive to be a bit taller. It seems to help a little bit with wheel spin, and then definitely on the high speed sections, a little less banging off the rev limiter. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to make those changes. I make some very minor changes to suspension, but I've never changed anything with the gearing.
I typically only change the gearing, and except in the other event we were doing, it's Argentina, it's super bumpy. I raised the car like a couple millimeters.
I raise the car for every event.
Yeah.
So I don't get high centered on things as easily.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't mess with the spring rates. I don't typically mess with the sway bar unless it's like a Group A car. Make it heavier. But yeah, definitely, because there's like sections in New England that are long, and it's like wah, 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 and you're just flat in fifth. And once you can hold it together, like that's where a lot of your speed comes from on those stages.
Cool. Well, I hope to get better. I hope to do some more. I hope to not be so long in between things. And I don't think we did a very good job promoting it this time either. We put it up like once before the event happened, and we didn't get quite as many people participating this time. But I think we'll do it again soon. I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, because we're gonna get better at it, the more we do it. So.
Yeah. No, it was pretty fun. It's still fun. It's still going on. You could still do it.
Yeah, you can join midway through. You're not going to win, obviously, but it's good fun to get involved with.
There's no thing to win. It's just something to not be bored.
You'll win our admiration for beating us
Yeah.
at an event that we are not good at.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
So, yeah, real cars.
yeah.
What have you been doing?
Oh, well, I was away last weekend out of town. Took a little road trip. I did so in a beautiful 2020 Nissan Altima.
Oh, you told me you had some
Yeah.
critiques.
So I haven't driven a new car in a while. You have a 2020 car, 2019 car, right? 2020? 2019.
Yeah, 2019. But
2019. Does your car have
I will say Volkswagens are more,
classic, old school,
yeah,
vintage?
especially the sedans.
Yeah.
In the like a GTI and a sedan, they're more analog. That's why we like them.
Does your car have driver assists? Does it have radar cruise or lane assist or warnings when you're coming out of your lane?
No, it only has side blind spot, which is
I think
handy
it's
because
federal. I think it's a federal mandate now.
well, you know what it is like, so
I could be wrong on that, but I think it's
cars used to have small mirrors, which was good for fuel economy. And then as blind spots got bigger, cars got giant mirrors, like through like 2005 to like 12, like every car had like giant mirrors. And then they started adding the they wanted to make them smaller for fuel economy because less wind resistance, but then you couldn't see like people in your quarter. So now they have the blind spot monitoring.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I have that. I've got forward collision warning. I don't think it would stop the car. It just beeps at me if somebody's slowing down really fast.
okay.
And I've got rear like cross traffic So like if I'm backing out of my driveway, it like beeps at me.
So essentially, nothing bothers you when you're driving down the highway.
No, no,
Okay.
there's nothing intrusive.
So this car, it doesn't have. I don't want to call it lane assist. It doesn't actually pull the steering wheel. Um, Let me back up a little bit. So long story long. My Volkswagen is still in the shop. I think we talked about that last episode, which was
Yeah,
like a couple weeks ago. My Volkswagen is still in the shop for warranty repair.
literally the amount of time that we haven't recorded a podcast.
Yeah. So it's been. This will be 3 weeks. Actually, yesterday was 3 weeks, which I think is excessive.
That is excessive,
So
and that's like almost. I think in mass here you'd be approaching like lemon law.
yeah, I'm not sure what the laws are out here, but
Yeah,
my issue with the whole thing is I also can't seem to get a straight answer out of my service advisor about what's going on. Um, I've never had a problem with him before. He's the same guy I always use. I think we talked about it before. I don't wrench in the car myself generally because the car is under warranty. So I like to have a history that everything's been done just to maintain my warranty status. And I know that they can't technically not give me warranty if I do my own maintenance, but I just don't want to fight. You know what I mean? It's not worth it to me. It costs a little bit
yeah, you
extra.
have to prove it.
Exactly. It costs a little extra for them to do the oil changes and whatnot, but I do it at the dealer anyway because I just do it. I still do the air filters and stuff myself because I'm not going to pay them $125 to put an air filter in. But anyway, so I don't generally have a problem with my service advisor. He's a car guy. He's into some 80s and 90s stuff, so we chat a bit when we're there. But brought the car in. I think we talked about it. I'll go over it real basic. PO 404 code, which is a EGR or DPF code. Could be either. It turns out the car needed both, supposedly. What I'm hearing is that the DPF works on oil, so oil gets burnt off to help burn off the soot in the exhaust when it goes into regen, supposedly. So it allows oil to get in there, is what he's trying to tell me, which I don't know how that works. Does
That
DPF take oil from the engine to work?
I don't. You don't have to add
It's
DPF
too
fluid.
old. I don't have I don't have DEF fluid, so I don't think that
I
oil
don't know how it
in
works,
there.
and
I
that
don't know how it
sounds
works.
strange to me.
Right. So anyway, he's telling me that a seal let go inside the turbo, which allowed oil to fill up the DPF. Now the DPF is in line in the exhaust. It's like if you were working on an older non-diesel vehicle, it's like where the downpipe would be off the turbo. That's where the DPF is. So he's saying that it filled up with oil, and then it got too hot, which is also weird because it's supposed to get hot because when the car goes into regen, it actually burns off the excess soot, so it doesn't come out the tailpipe. It doesn't create emissions. It burns it off inside the car. But anyway, so it filled up with oil, and then it got too hot. When it got too hot, it cracked the housing, and then the EGR was working in overtime, so that failed. So, okay. Fix the car, please. I don't need to know how it works. I just need to make sure it works. If it was an older car that I was working on myself, I would have invested a little more time into figuring it out. Now I think I'm going to because I'm curious what's happening. But supposedly, in doing all this work, they've broken a bolt. Now, I don't know about you, Andrew. Actually, I do because I've been there. But you and I have both broken bolts before. The act of retrieving a broken bolt out of whatever it's broken in is not necessarily a time-consuming experience if it's accessible.
No, it's a pain. It might be a couple days.
Okay,
Maybe. I mean,
maybe
it depends. It
but
depends on what you
it's maybe a
need
couple
to
days.
get to take it out.
It's maybe a couple days if you're a backyard mechanic who's doing this in his free time.
Yeah.
If you're in a full-service dealership repair facility, I mean, a couple of days is plenty of time, I would think, to get a bolt out. He can't quite tell me where the bolt is stuck in. He keeps saying in the turbo, which to me would be super simple because if you have the turbo out of the car, then that would be a super easy thing to put on the bench and, put in a vise and pull the bolt out of. I can't get the word out of them if he's replacing the turbo, which I assume he is. Um, so I don't know where this bolt is broken. Is it bolted in the cylinder head? Was it a manifold bolt? Because on this particular Volkswagen setup, the turbo is cast as part of the exhaust manifold. So you have to take the manifold off to take the turbo off. So did he break a bolt in the cylinder head?
Yeah,
I mean, that
it's
would
very
take a
strange.
little more time to repair, I would think. So I don't know. I'm a little frustrated. At first, I didn't care. Um, then we were taking a trip. We had to deliver some stuff to Naomi's daughter, who lives in Oklahoma. So we were going to take the Volkswagen. So I brought it in, more than a week before we were going on our trip to make sure I got it back in time, which obviously didn't happen. So I told him that, and he's like, "All right, we'll get you a rental car." All right, that's cool. So we were in that rental Altima, um, which as of Friday, we're recording this on Monday, Martin Luther King Day. So on Friday, I talked to him, and he said, "Well, we're going to extend your rental till next Friday at least." So I'm not sure what's happening, but anyway, going back to this 2020 Altima, um, driver assists are annoying.
Yeah, yeah, they are.
I don't understand them. So it has lane change assist. I'm not sure what sets off the little warning, but it vibrates the steering wheel and it flashes super bright colors in the dashboard if it thinks you're leaving your lane. But, I can see in the mirrors where I am in the lane. And this thing would go off so prematurely that you have so much time. So you keep the car dead center in the middle of the lane and it's fine. But if the car wanders at all, like inches to the left or to the right, the thing goes off every time. It doesn't make any sense.
Usually, a switch to shut them off.
Well, we'll get there in a second. I wanted to experience all these things before I started messing with turning them off. I got in the car. I noticed it had the things. I said, you know what? I'm going to give them a go. I've never driven a car with all these things, any kind of distance other than a parking lot. Maybe I'll get used to it. Maybe it'll be okay. So we'll just put it this way. I didn't turn them off until we got to Texas. So,
Hmm.
um, and then Naomi was driving and she's like, I cannot drive with these. We have to turn these off. So, and she's not, the supercar person that we are. She's more of a, casual interest in cars. So if she doesn't like it, then I can't imagine most consumers love it. It doesn't seem to make much sense to me. So it has the lane assist, which tells you when you're leaving your lane, which is way too aggressive. It has radar cruise control, which you can set the following distance.
I do like that. I have used it.
Well,
Um,
maybe it's just
Nissan's had that for a long time because they used to have it on Infinities
well, it's
over 10
very
years
it's
ago.
very invasive now, and I do not like it because what happens is at the closest setting. So obviously you want to keep your following distances far apart in the highway, and this car has that it's set so that you can have it so you're 30 car lengths behind or 28 car lengths behind. It seems like doesn't seem like there's any way to get any closer. So what happens is you'll crest a hill and there'll be a car in front of you, and you're just driving in the normal lane with the cruise control set, through Texas on like set the cruise control at like 80 miles an hour, and you come up behind a car, and you don't notice the car is slowing down because the car is so far in the distance that you haven't even like entered your brain yet that you have to pass this car, and it gradually slows you down to maintain that distance until if that car's doing 65 miles an hour, you're just doing 65 miles an hour, just driving in the lane. Like it's not it just doesn't allow you to get close enough. It should give me a little bit more. It's like a quarter mile behind the car in front of me. I don't understand why it's so far. Maybe an eighth mile, but still, it's much further than is necessary for safe following distances at its closest setting, or its closest setting for the car. So that was quite annoying. And auto high beams are also annoying
Oh, yes.
because they turn themselves off certain signs.
Oh, it bounces back.
Yes, super frustrating.
Hmm.
So you're driving through, you know, the middle of the night nobody else is around. You have your high beams on, and it hits the sign at the right height, and it bounces the light back at it, and it turns the high beams off. So I don't like any of
Meanwhile,
it. Grumpy old man yells
I'm
at cloud. Okay, so that's what we're doing right here.
meanwhile I'm driving towards this person, and my headlights don't trigger them to turn off because they're driving around the city with streetlights on with auto high beams.
I don't know how that could be a thing because these things are so sensitive. They turn off at every little bit.
It
Like
it
coming down
seems like it's mostly Toyotas that do this. Like it's not reactive enough.
coming down Route 17 back into Arizona, I-17, like through like the mountain passes. There was like an 18 wheeler like a mile down the road on the opposite side coming at me, and there's you know 1,000 feet in between the lanes, and he's coming around a corner, and it's just the high beams turn off. It's like he's so far away. It's not even. This is not affecting him at all right now. You can barely see his truck. So I don't know. I'm gonna be grumpy old man and say that I don't like it. I will say the rest of the car wasn't terrible. Um, I always hate Altimas. I always will hate Altimas. I've been driven into a few times by Altima drivers, so I don't like Altima drivers. But I will say the car itself wasn't a terrible place to be for a 12-hour drive.
Yeah,
Um, if I had to compare it to something, I say it's like a brand new BMW 10 years ago.
that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. The trim is that faux wood finish that's halfway decent. The seats are, I don't know if they're leather or if they're like a vinyl, but they feel nice and they're heated and they have a power lumbar section, which is nice. So you can get that exact, perfect place where your back doesn't hurt. The back seat's better than the one that we rented many years ago when we were out here doing a road trip on the West Coast, which had like a park bench back seat.
Oh, that was that like '05 to like 10
Yeah,
Altima.
the real bad Altimas.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say the worst part about this car was the road noise, which obviously could be tires. They were Continental Conti something or others, which I wouldn't think would be loud, but it had a lot of road noise. That was probably the worst part of the car. But the actual feeling inside the car was nice. All the touch surfaces were nice. I don't like big screens that you have to touch to do functions because they inevitably wind up covered in fingerprints, which is annoying. But I mean, it was a car; it did its thing. It's not anything any of us are going to buy, but I just don't like all these electronic nannies in the cars that they have now. It's just not. It's too much. It takes too much away. Like either go full autonomy or don't. I don't think this in between stuff is going to help. So that's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Would not recommend.
All right.
The Brad score of quirks and features right there, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
How about your old cars?
Yeah. So I've been working on the '84 Starion.
Mm.
Yeah. So I get
No cats. No cats in there.
no cats this time. No good stories, which is good because the car is all jacked up, and any stories would involve the car falling on me, probably, right?
Mm.
So yeah, no stories. Um, if y'all can rewind back to late last year, I was going to be driving the car out of Massachusetts across the country to here. And at the last minute, we chose against it because I filled it up with gas and gas poured all over the ground.
Right.
So I had it transported out here with the Colt. It got here. I haven't touched it other than the infamous cat story to move it that one day because I've been working on little jobs here and there in the Colt. So I haven't been digging into that and little jobs here and there on the truck. So the steering has kind of been just sitting. So I kind of said this weekend that I need to at least get out there and start picking away at what's leaking in the fuel tank. Is it the filler neck or is it the tank itself? So I jacked the car up, pulled the wheel liner off of the driver's side. That's where the filler is, so I can inspect the filler neck all the way down to the tank. And there's no hole in the filler neck. So filler neck is good. The rubber hose between the tank and the filler neck is good. It's not leaking from there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a positive and a negative because that means that the tank has to come out of the car. And I don't know if you have all seen pictures of this car, but it is very, very rusty.
Hmm.
So obviously, my first fear is that I'm going to stop breaking bolts here now, as well as in the Volkswagen dealer down the street, and
Yeah.
I'm going to have an issue with this car. So um, I didn't have any rust penetrant here, so I went out to grab some Deep Creep. Deep Creep is not readily available in Arizona.
No, I wouldn't expect it to be.
Yeah, PB Blast is, which is not the worst thing in the world, but it's not Deep Creep. I haven't gone to a Napa or somewhere yet, because around here it was later in the day when I went to look for it. So I went to a Pep Boys and a O'Reilly's, and they didn't have it. So I'm hoping maybe a Napa does, but we'll get there eventually. So I bought a can of PB Blast, and I sprayed the car down, all the bolts in the gas tank and on the filler neck, because there's two bolts on the filler neck where it bolts to the body of the car on the inside. Um, got a pair of JIS screwdrivers for Christmas, which Andrew's talked about before. If you don't have
Oh yeah.
JIS screwdrivers, you should buy them, because if you have a Japanese car, they are the way to go.
Yes.
In my experience on old Mitsubishis, especially of the era that this Starion is, standard American style screwdrivers will just tear the bolts up, especially when they're slightly corroded. And these JIS screwdrivers, I was able to pull off the fuel door and the bolts on the filler neck without any drama at all. Like, they just went in, gave them a little tap with the hammer to kind of break them free, and then they just came off like nothing. So amazing having the right tools. So I had the fuel door off, the filler neck unbolted. I sprayed down the bottom of the car, and then I said, it's getting dark out. I'm working on the car in the yard. I said, all right, I'll go back and tackle it the next day. So the next day was today. So I went out there and started working all of the bolts on the tank, and every single one of them came free
Wow.
without much effort. So after spraying them all at the PV Blast, before I went into each one of them, I took a chisel and a hammer, and just because I didn't have a proper punch, but I
Mhm.
took a chisel and the hammer, and I just hit the end of the bolt fairly aggressively um, to get them off. So the way it's set up, it's a stud on the car with a nut that holds the tank in place.
Yeah.
So stud is, I assume, pressed in or welded into the car somehow. Um, yeah, every single bolt came off. So I have all the bolts loosened now. I didn't take them all the way off because I didn't want the tank to fall out on me, because I haven't disconnected the pump from up top yet, because I wasn't going to disconnect the fuel pump if I couldn't get the tank out, because I didn't want to leave the car dead in the yard. So I figured if I took the whole fuel pump off the top, which Andrew, because you helped me put it in last time, is questionable at best because of the amount of rust up there. I didn't want to break something up there and then have a dead car in the yard and not
Mm.
be willing to fix it because the tank was stuck in the car. And again, the plan is to eventually swap all of the good interior stuff to a good Arizona shell. So I don't put too much effort in. At the same time, I'd like to make the car running and driving and make it mechanically run perfect before I swap everything over. So anyway, so I have to pull the tank down. The car has a fairly rare factory accessory trailer hitch on the car,
Yeah.
which I don't think I've seen another one in my Starion travels over the years. It's not a very common part. The trailer hitch mounts from the back of the rear subframe, and it's a bar that goes across the fuel tank and then bolts into the bumper rebar in the back. So it's 4 bolts along the rebar, and then one giant, I think it's a 21 millimeter or 20 or 19 millimeter. I don't remember.
Hmm.
Actually, it's not a millimeter at all. It's all American hardware. So I think it was bigger than a half inch. I know that. I don't remember exactly.
Huh.
11/16 maybe. With a giant bolt in that subframe holding this trailer hitch in, and it looked like it had spent. It looked like it sank in 1912 with the Titanic. That's what it looked
Huh.
like. So it wasn't pretty. The bolts on the rebar did come off pretty simply, which is amazing. I got them to move just a little bit with the big breaker bar, and then I just said, you know what? I don't need these bolts. I don't need this part. So damn the torpedoes. If I break them, I break them. And I put the electric impact on them with the impact sockets, and they didn't fight me even a little. It just, that tool is so nice to have.
Hmm.
So nice to have. So I got all of those. There's 4 bolts in the rebar that came off, and then I had to fight that big one on the bottom of the subframe. So eventually it came. It took hammer, breaker bar, and then eventually same thing with that impact, the electric Milwaukee, like the 18-volt impact. Took it off, without much complaint afterwards. It was definitely smoking when it came off from the heat and the
Oh, yeah.
blast in it, but it definitely came off. So, however, at that point, the bar itself had become one with the subframe. So we still weren't out of the woods yet. Thankfully, Naomi has this giant crowbar that I think was her father's or her grandfather's. It's like a very old school, like, if you have this in 2020, you're either a contractor or a criminal kind of crowbar. Yeah, it's a serious crowbar. So I managed to get just enough of the rust broken away, and then I could hammer that crowbar in. And then I had her hold the back of the thing up because now the bolts are off, and I was afraid this thing was gonna, break free and drop this giant piece of iron with rusty bolts on my stomach as I'm laying under the car. And we got it in there just by shaking it and hitting it with the pry bar and pulling it down, and we got it off. It was a fight, but we got it off. So, and then again, now it's dark outside, so the tank is just sitting there. I put the car back on the road, on the ground. I had to go back into the hatch tomorrow, pull the fuel pump out, and drop the tank. But unfortunately, the tank is rotted on the top, so I'm not going to be welding the tank because it's a gas tank, and I'm not going to have the patience to clean it out enough to weld it first. So
I wonder how rotted it is.
I'm going to see how rotted it is first, and then I have a couple ideas in my mind. If it's small pinholes, I can just use some quick steel.
I was just thinking that, like some JB Quick Steel, like just
Yep.
skim coated over it.
Yep. If it's bigger than that, the thought is maybe some sheet metal and rivets and seal it all in around the edges just to make it
Maybe.
passable. Yeah.
You still have to drill into a gas tank.
I'm less concerned about drilling into a gas tank that's full of fuel. I think if it was empty, I wouldn't want to drill it. Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I'll before I do anything stupid, I'll consult with those in the know. But I mean, I guess I could also drain the fuel out of it. It's not the end of the world. It's only got half a tank, so it's probably 5 or 6 gallons. It's not tons of fuel, but I don't know.
I bet it's just pinholes.
If it's just pinholes, then it's just going to get sealed up with some. I'll just sand it smooth and put some of that quick steel on there and hope for the best. So it'll be interesting. See what happens. So and I have a brand new radiator on the way for it. So
Cool.
Yeah, a pre 85 radiator, which is not common anymore. I thought I was going to have to adapt to something else. Which, I mean, obviously a radiator is not too difficult to make fit. And just bend some sheet metal up, but
you're also in the land of radiator shops. You could have had the one you have fixed.
That's true, and I plan on having it fixed and put aside.
Yeah.
Because I have a brand spanking new NOS Mitsubishi one that's for the 83 to 85 cars. So that'll be good. And so it's a metal tank, factory style radiator, which will be nice to have out here in the land of heat. Because the plan is to have that car, once it's switched over to a new shell, to have fully functional air conditioning and everything to use it all year round. So
yep,
I do want to have a good radiator and good cooling system for that matter. I may even wind up changing into an aluminum radiator later just for efficiency, but it'd be nice to have the factory set up for now, and it should be good.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so I'm excited. I've made a good amount of progress on it, and it's coming along. So hopefully by next episode with project car updates, we'll have the tank back in the car and the car will be running again. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Was there anything else?
Oh, what else did I do? You have to remind me, Andrew. Did I do anything else I told you about and didn't talk about here?
I don't remember now.
I don't think so. We talked about the exhaust last week on the Colt, right?
Yep.
That's all done.
Mm-hmm.
So, I finished the chassis on a scale project car.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing that. My automotive nerdiness knows no bounds, as our listeners all very well know by now, I'm sure. And I picked up a couple of RC trucks about 2 years ago and haven't finished them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I picked up this Toyota pickup. It's like 1/16 scale. It's one of those scale looking crawlers. And I finished building the chassis on that.
Hmm.
So it's got 4 links, front and rear, frame, like ladder style frame, like a real truck.
Hmm.
Transfer case in the middle, and it's neat. It's 4-wheel drive. Put the electronics in it. Maybe after podcast tonight, I'll finish the electronics and paint and detail the
Cool.
body and put that together. But yeah, it's by this company called WPL. They're a Chinese RC company. They make it in a ready to run, like buy the out of the box and drive it, or they make it in a kit form. The ready to run one comes with like very toy like servos and stuff, so that it doesn't have like proportional steering and doesn't have a good receiver or transmitter, and the tires are very hard. If you buy the kit version, it comes with much higher end componentry and like really soft tires for like rock crawling and stuff with it. So the kit version is the way to go, even though it costs more than the fully built one. So, but it's a scale 1/16 scale, like 1980 Toyota pickup.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. I'm excited to get it finished. And then I've been looking at obviously anything RC. They have upgrades available.
Right.
So they have like a 2-speed transfer case,
Huh.
which is really cool. Metal gear sets. And they make different wheels and tires for it now. They make different body sets for them now. There's a lot of cool stuff out there for them. So the radio stuff that I got is 3-channel, so I could put the 2-speed transfer case in there and have it so it's switchable on the fly, which is neat.
Weird.
Yeah, the technology, Andrew, has come so far since we last built, and it's very inexpensive because everything got made by China companies now. So like the radio setup was like $45. Yeah, servos are like $6. It's everything is so cheap and so small. It's crazy. Like a battery charger, they have the new battery charger technology. You remember the old style we used to have was like it had a dial on it, like a timer, and it had the amp gauge, like an old school amp gauge that went up. These new ones are they're digital, they're smart chargers. They charge and discharge, and they have multiple adapters for different kinds of batteries, and they're like $64. So
yeah, one of the last ones I had was a peak charger. So
yeah, but mine was a peak charger too, but I still had the dial on it.
oh, I didn't have a dial. I had a later one that was better.
Yeah, but anyway, it's amazing to me how far our technology has come on these things, and it was almost so confusing that I couldn't figure it out because it's been so long since we've been into it. But now that I have all the stuff for it, the only thing I need to buy for it is a battery. But I don't know. I'm excited to have that thing going. It'd be neat to like take camping or something. You know what I mean? Or use to take pictures of and put on the Instagram page. So, cool. But I bought a couple of kits a couple of years ago. So that's the first one, and then I have an even smaller. It's like a 1/32 scale Montero. I got to build that one next. It's a 2nd-gen Montero. Or the Orlando. I think I sent you a picture of that, didn't I?
I think so.
Yeah. So once I finish this Toyota truck, I'll move on to that. So it's been neat to kind of get back into it. Get my my eyesight really focused in on these tiny little screws and these small scale RC vehicles. And deciphering Chinese directions. That's probably the hardest. That's probably the hardest part of all. You get this big bag with like 120 screws in it, and there's like minor differences in them, and they're all in one bag. Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah. I actually wound up taking one of those metal magnet cups that you use working on a real car, and I spread them out inside the metal magnet cup by length, and that made it easier to kind of figure it out.
You could use your grip mats too.
Well, the metal cup, the magnet kept them all in place.
Yeah.
So that's why I use the magnet cup. But also the small grip mat has a disassembled window switch for the steering in it, which is not going back together. Put it that way. I need to find one. So if any of our listeners has a early 83 to 85 window switch for Starion. Hit me up.
Cool.
So, how about you? Any project car updates?
Uh, I bought another project car.
Fanfare and rap horns. Yay.
It's not a Volvo.
It's also not a Mitsubishi.
It's not a Mitsubishi. Although the last three cars I purchased have not been Mitsubishis. So
Have you ever bought a project car that wasn't a Mitsubishi?
I mean, you can count the WRX.
Okay. Kind of forgot about that. That was a daily, though. That was still a daily.
Yeah,
Every
good
car that has
project
not
too.
been a daily has been a Mitsubishi, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So, but it's a cool car that I have some history with, or history with these types of cars.
Yeah, I've
So
always loved these cars.
my first job was at an Infinity dealer in like 2001, and first gen like Infinities from like the early 90s were still coming to the dealership to get fixed at that point.
Yep. Yeah, I remember your stories of early Q45s and um,
Yeah.
M30s and some neat stuff.
So I drive along a lot of G20s, and I always liked them. And our buddy Chris came across an original owner car down the South Shore with like, I think it's a 96 or 95.
I think 95 is the last of the first gen.
Yeah. No, those went all the way to 98.
Oh, was it that late?
Yep.
I think the car's 95, though, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So they were like 91 through 97, actually, I think. But anyway, it's first gen G20, not a touring, but a 5-speed, green on light tan, kind of beige
We'll
cloth.
call it forest green over biscuit.
Yeah,
It's probably what they called it back in the day.
probably. And it's only got like 111,000 miles on it,
That's it?
and needs a few things. Yeah, it's
Oh, wow.
super low mileage, super clean. Interior looks like he said it was a single guy that owned it. Turns out he lived on the North Shore, purchased it from Kelly Infinity where I worked.
So you've probably driven the car before.
There's a possibility that I drove it because he didn't move down to the South Shore till later in the 2000s.
Hmm.
Um, for a New England car, it's pretty darn clean.
Yeah, it's not very rusty at all.
Uh,
It's got a couple of spots of
yeah,
like surfacey rust, I noticed, but nothing that's like
yeah,
gross holes anywhere. He kept very good care of the car.
yeah. So I'm basically just gonna do some minor fixes to it, clean it up. I'll register it, drive it a little bit, but I'm gonna end up selling it. So
Neat. Something to keep you busy while you're at home.
yeah, something to work on that, and then ideally I can sell it for a little bit and roll that into another project car, and
Yeah,
then
these are
ideally I can
these are
get to
neat
my
cars. I mean, the G20 was kind of um, an entry level luxury car. It was kind of their version of the BMW 3 Series, I guess, but it was probably less than a BMW 3 Series at the time. They were front wheel
yeah.
drive. It's an SR20, right?
I would say it would have competed more with an Integra
Okay.
than a 3 Series.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's the entry level, luxury vehicle market.
Oh, actually, you know what? Yeah, I'm mistaken because in 95, well, from like what's the last year of the E30? Like 91, 92.
92? 92.
So yeah, that's probably what they were aiming for was that E30, and then the E36 came out, so it was a little more upmarket
Yeah.
than this car. But yeah, it's around that um, type
They're
of stuff. I'm
they're
trying
they're
to
like
think
they're
of,
like a luxury Sentra SER.
yeah, but they're not the same platform.
No,
It's its own platform.
no, because we didn't get the Nissan equivalent in the States. It was called the
No, we didn't get the Premier.
Primera, yeah, which we all love from Gran Turismo, and
Yeah,
the Castrol and the Calsonic Tamiya kits back in the '90s. That I think we both. I built the Castrol one. I think you had the Calsonic one, right?
I remember. Yeah, I remember my specifically that when I first played Gran Turismo career mode, the first used car I could buy was a green G20.
Yep. Yeah. So I've always liked these cars, and There's some people that make fun of us for always owning the same cars, but our taste has grown together because we were together all the time, living across the street from one another and being into cars. So that's why, we both have a soft spot for these cars because of Gran Turismo and playing Gran Turismo and building those models together. So it's certainly a car that I have always kind of been like, if the right one ever came along with a manual transmission, I was going to buy it as well. So you just beat me to it.
Well, it's funny because now I went from having 0 green cars in a year. I have 2.
Yeah, that's true too. I've always had one.
A green car?
Yeah, the Camaro.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I don't think I ever had another green car other than that one, but that's. Oh wait,
Yeah,
no,
it's a pretty cool
I
car.
had a green Cressida.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll clean it up and take some nice pictures of it and see where it goes.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see the progress of this car, and I hope you still have it next time when I'm back in that area because I'd like to drive one. Because I don't think I've ever actually driven a 5-speed one. I know I've driven a second gen automatic.
Yeah,
I used to be
they're
somebody
okay.
who had one. It was underwhelming because it's a heavier car. It's an automatic, so
These are cool because, or this particular one's cool because it has all the original owner's manuals. It has the original keys too. The like the
the big
very
heavy metal
JDM
one.
like jewelry keys that these
Yep,
cars came with.
that's cool.
So, yeah,
Yeah, I remember the
they're-
big metal head on those.
mhm.
They're very smooth. It looked
The
kind of like
classic.
the emblem on the front of the Q45. Had seen the
Yep,
scroll work in it, right?
that's right. And that classic like ding ding ding,
Mm-hmm.
like it's like a really fancy chime or a really like non-aggressive chime if you leave the key in the ignition.
So does this car have the factory mesh wheels on it?
No, those were for like tourings.
Okay.
It's got the kind of directional spokes.
Well, they kind of like GSR wheels, like Integra GSR wheels, right? That's the kind of blade look.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah. Again, the competition. That's cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see this car come along. So it's not a touring, so it wouldn't have had like a limited slip or anything, right?
No, I didn't realize that was a thing, but that they would have had limited slips. But no,
I'm not sure
I
if
know
they
they
did. I'm
definitely would have had a spoiler.
curious what the difference was between the touring and the non-touring. I know touring had more bolstered seats and it had a little spoiler.
They had like super deep bucket seats,
Yeah.
usually leather, a sunroof, and a spoiler. This car does not have a sunroof either.
Okay, that's neat.
Yeah, it's probably good. It probably kept it from having leaks. So.
Yeah, it had less rust and
Hmm.
no stains in the headliner.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see some pictures. And did you pick the car up yet or not?
No, I got the paperwork from him. Instead of like towing it up here, because he's about an hour away from me,
Yeah, just wait to get
I'm just
registered.
gonna register it, and I'll just go down with plates and get it.
Is there a delay on registrations in Mass right now?
Doesn't seem like it, because he purchased it. He had to title it in his name, then it'll get titled in my name. So technically, it'd be like third owner, but I'm really like the second owner.
And no miles have been put on it since the first owner
Yeah,
sold it, though. So he's kind of like the dealer middleman at this point.
yeah.
Maybe a one owner car. So,
So
and unfortunately, he only had to title it because the original owner, when he sold it, filled the title out wrong. So, or filled the title out
yeah,
completely. So in Mass, you can't go to a third owner, or you can't have a middleman who's not a dealer if they put his name on the title. So he had to title it. So,
hmm,
or I mean, you could have gone back to the original owner and had him apply for a lost title or whatever. But that's
and it's a bummer because so I had to pay him. I paid him what he wanted, and on top of that, I also paid the sales tax
right,
because when you title it, you have to pay the sales tax,
right. So
and then I have to title it again, and I will also have to pay sales
yeah,
tax.
pay sales tax twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, which people who are listening who don't live in Mass will be like, it's a used car. Why are you paying sales tax?
Yeah. So you have to pay. I thought you only paid sales tax when you registered the car, not when you titled it.
No, it's title, not registration. It's usually you're registering the car when you're titling it, so
Yeah.
it feels the same way. But no, it's on new title is when it happens, and every time a new owner comes into play, you have to tax the car again. So they don't listen. They don't call it
Yeah.
taxation
Which,
for nothing.
yeah. Yeah. That doesn't seem like, man, they certainly get to double dip on all those taxes.
Yeah, especially on cars, because then you
Yeah.
also have to pay excise tax for it,
Mm-hmm.
even Well, it's the beginning of the year, so you're better off. But even if you register it in like December, you have to pay excise tax for the entire year of that year.
No, no,
So,
they prorate that.
do they?
Like I bought my Volkswagen on like December 30th, and my excise tax bill for 2019 was like $20.
All right. Well, maybe I don't notice it because my cars are not usually expensive cars, so the excise tax is so small anyway.
So there was like a little bit of excise tax, and then it's annoying because it might have even been more than that. I don't remember, but you get like that bill, and then like a month later, you get the excise tax bill
For the following year.
for the following year.
Yeah. An excise tax is a road tax that they charge on every vehicle you have registered every year, regardless of how old it is. And
Yes, and it never
based,
gets cheaper.
it does get
It
cheaper.
just nope. It never gets cheaper. It just bottoms out at a certain price, and that's where it
Yeah, but
stays.
it's like $12.
No,
Yeah,
God, no, no way.
100%. I'll
Nope.
show you
Like
my excise tax bill.
Talon.
Well, your Talon and Galan are still too new. I will show you my excise tax bills for the 70s and
How
60s
are they too
cars,
new? They're 30 years old.
but they're not 50 years old. So the way excise tax is calculated, it's a percentage of the original sale price of the car. So the
Yeah.
fact that the Talon was a $15,000 car means that your sales tax is going to be significantly more than my $3,000 '78 Colt. So my bill for the Colt every year is like $12 when I lived there.
Oh, yeah. See, every year I've ever owned these cars,
It's like $45.
yeah, it's like $40 to
Yeah.
$45.
Yeah. That's because of the original cost of the car. It gets to a certain percentage of it and it bottoms out. But on the older cars, it's super low. Like it doesn't have any. Thankfully, it has nothing to do with current value of the car because my 1968 Camaro SS is worth a hell of a lot more than my '78 Colt. But because the car was like $3,600 brand new, my excise tax is like $15.
Yeah, it's so
So it
weird.
doesn't care about the value of the car. It only cares about the original purchase price of the car, original MSRP of the car.
And you don't even pay them technically. You don't pay the excise to the state.
It's to your
Technically, you pay it
individual
to the city
municipality. Yeah. And the
that you
biggest
live in.
racket of all is the fact that if you don't pay it within a week of its due date, it gets sent to a quote unquote collections agency called Kelly and Ryan, who is actually run by the state, and most cities use them, and they add on charges ridiculously from the original price of the excise tax.
Yeah.
So the last year I lived there, or the second to last year, whatever year it was when my life was in complete turmoil, I missed paying my excise tax. And what would have been a grand total of like $130 for all the cars wound up costing me $700.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
yeah,
It's,
and they wouldn't let you do anything. You couldn't register a car, couldn't renew a license, you couldn't do anything until you paid that price. So not fun.
no, and our roads are not nice enough to justify.
Between that tax and the gas tax that is paid in Massachusetts, you would think that the roads would be paved in, I don't know what they paved in, but it'd be something that's real smooth. Rich Corinthian leather.
I think a lot of it, we're getting way off here, but
That's
I think a lot of
fine.
it ends up going to like municipal transportation.
Probably.
Yeah.
Listen, what do we always talk about? It all goes back to Big Salt, Andrew.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's the thing. So you tax me to use these roads that you throw salt on that ruins my car.
Right. Well, hey, listen,
It costs me money.
your excise tax bottoms out because they want you to buy a new car. That's why they salt it, because you can have a higher excise tax.
Yeah. And then I had to get my yearly inspection sticker. That's another racket.
Yeah, no,
$35 every year.
yeah. If it passes.
They literally, yeah. I mean, but on a brand new car, like my Volkswagen, they just pull it in. Of course, all the lights work. Of course, the suspension's not falling apart because there's only 6,000 miles on it.
Yeah, if you buy a brand new car here in Arizona, we don't have safety inspections. We do have emissions, depending on your county. So my county is the most populous county in the state, so we have emissions inspections. But if you buy a brand new car, you don't get inspections for, I think it's 5 years.
Yeah, because it should work.
Yeah, because the car is fresh
Yeah.
off the dealer's lot. You don't need to get an inspection for 5 years.
Yeah.
So,
Like I remember getting for a while, I had my inspector's license when I was working at a dealer.
at the Infinity
And,
dealer.
Infinity dealer. And the guy was, they had us like me and a bunch of techs. We all just did a a group thing on like a Saturday because it was cheaper. You could just do the train, and the trainer from the state is like, even though the cars are brand new, you should be double checking them and make sure the ball joints are good. And we're all like, okay, sure, buddy.
All right.
Yeah, a brand new Japanese car is going to have bad ball
And
joints.
if it does, that's a warranty and a lawsuit back to the company. We're not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
So, and then, like I said, we don't even have safety inspection here. So, even after that 5 year grace period, you go in for your emissions inspection, you could have 200,000 miles in the car. They're still not going to check your brake pads and your ball joints.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
big rackets, big rackets.
All right. Anyway,
Well,
I think it's
congratulations on the
podcast.
new car. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to drive it, and I'm excited to see what you do with it.
Yeah,
So,
it should be fun.
I know you, and I have a feeling that it won't be as quick of a flip as you think because you're going to wind up liking it and enjoying it and driving it for at least a year.
Maybe
Just a theory.
we'll see.
And it's not a bad theory. I mean, the car's not going to go down in value. This is the exact moment in time to be buying mid '90s cars because they've bottomed out. You know, you're not going to lose money unless you spend tons of it on custom stuff,
Oh
but you're not going to
no,
lose money.
I'm not doing a rotisserie restoration of it either.
Right. That's what I mean. That's the kind of car that you own, you drive for a year. You can get back every dime you put into it, at least without an issue. And you've saved another car and you've moved on to give it to somebody else and say, hold out your hand like a wheeler dealer.
Yeah, yeah.
So good stuff.
All right. So, as always, keep cars analog and aim for the roses.